Hello and welcome. The goal of this podcast is to get listeners connected with others in the sports industry because they say it's all about who you know, and now you know us. Awesome. Well, hello everybody. This is Connor Shank, and you're listening to the Constant Sports Podcast, the show that is committed to connecting you to other sports professionals because they say it's all about who you know. And today, you know Gabe Diaz. Thanks for joining us today, Gabe.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here and dive into a little bit more about my journey in the sports industry and, get this ball rolling.
Yeah, let's do it. So, as I said, we're talking to Gabe today, and he is the current director of the John Jay Family Foundation. And we'll talk a little bit about his role with that, his role with his grad school, things like that. And basically just talk about foundations, marketing, kind of the agency, sports business, graduate school, and much more. So we'll just kind of roll it off here. And Gabe, most of our viewers and listeners are kind of in that graduate school. Maybe they just graduate from their undergraduate. They're interested in the sports industry. They kind of want to get the next step. And as we kind of both have this mutual common thing where we went to a grad school, got a little bit more education. So kind of what was your reasoning behind that? And kind of how'd you end up over there in Miami?
So interestingly enough, I went into undergrad as a history major and I was focused on education. I wanted to be a high school teacher. That was my plan for my freshman year and my sophomore year of undergrad. In my junior year, I took a class, a sports administration class where we volunteered. Through the course, we volunteered at the New York City Marathon, and the entire course was pretty much just us researching what went into the marathon and the sponsorship aspects, the security aspects, and it was really kind of an introduction to sports administration. And I kind of just took it as an elective to fill my credits for my junior year. And honestly, that experience changed my life. The class itself, just doing research on things that were related to sports, like whether it be sponsorship or event management and security and things like that, like I found it to be very interesting. And then the volunteering at the actual event, we were actually at the finish line packing bags for the people who were crossing, and then giving them out as they crossed. And wow, what an experience that was for someone who's grown up loving sports. And I know it's not like a baseball game or a football game, but that's sports management, and that was the introduction for me in that field. So I actually continued my degree in history, and when I finished, I knew that I needed to do more. I wanted to do more, so I started to seek programs in sports administration since I had such a love for that course. And I continued to talk and connect with my professor who taught that course. And my last 2 years of undergrad, I think I met with him like maybe once or twice a month, just talking to him about sports administration because I didn't have any classes in the field, so I really didn't know what I was doing. All I knew is I love sports, and that was fun. So I tried to figure out what I was going to do with that once I graduated, and I knew that I needed to kind of go to the next level through school. So I started to look for the best programs and thinking and making sure that I was aware that I don't have anything off sports administration right now. I was coming in pretty much from scratch with passion, so I needed to go somewhere that was going to be able to plug me in to a good network and make it work. So, that's why University of Miami was almost at the top of my list. Another school that's pretty interesting to me was University of Michigan and Georgetown. Both of their programs really, really are good at integrating you with the sports that are around. But University of Miami was the decision for me, and I'm so happy that I was able to come. I mean, Miami has, the major sports all around. You have collegiate athletic programs all around. And then there's just so much sports just in general down here, from whether it be athletes or, coming down here to train or to retire, whatever the case may be. There is stuff here to be done. And, when I didn't really even learn that until, my first couple weeks in class, where Dr. Dees would literally tell us, hey, you guys are in the perfect place, but you have to make it happen. You have to go ahead and maneuver and find ways to meet the people that are going to put you where you want to be. So that's really why I came to Miami. And then when I got here, that's why I was so happy to be here, because the teachers, the program, they did really, really well integrating us with the area. And, I was really, really confident once I kind of knew what was around me to really be able to kind of do the job right.
Right. Yeah, no, I echo a lot of those same statements when you're going into a grad program and kind of look at the surrounding sports team, sports area. As a lot of the viewers know, I went to the ASU program, and they got, the 4 or 5 major sport teams here. They got hockey, then they got Ironmans and triathlons and things. So I think that's important, as you're saying, is when you're going to the program, you also, you're learning, but there's so much around you. And as you kind of talked to in the beginning, there's events not like outside of your normal like stadium event where it's a marathon or triathlon or things like that where, and we'll touch a little bit about this later, but even with the foundation, that's why I love sports is there's so many different avenues that people don't really realize are avenues until they get in there and like, oh, okay, I can be a director of a foundation with an athlete, and it all ties back in together. So just skills like that and things that are important to build on. And as you said, you're trying to get out there and make it happen. What were kind of some of the things that you did at your time, in the program? Like, I'm in school, but I got to make some things happen. Was it networking events? Were you doing cold calls? Kind of what did that look like?
So I'll touch on three things. The first one is I had an internship with the Miami Marlins while I was going to school. I
Okay.
actually so I graduated from William Patterson. It's a school in New Jersey
Mhm.
in June of 2021, or actually May of 2021, and then I got an internship with the Marlins. It was a coaching internship in their RBI program. It was a summer program, so I kind of went down there literally, I think 2, 3 weeks after my graduation, lived with my dad for a couple months, and I started that internship there. And then by the time school started in August, they had offered me a follow-up internship to start at the end of the
Um,
season. So then, boom, right there, I kind of was already into an internship
yep.
situation, and then I was starting school. And I think that that was the best part. That was the best thing that I could have done because what
Mhm.
it really taught me was it showed me that the things that I'm learning in the classroom are very, very transferable to the
Yeah.
things that are happening in person and what's actually going on right there in the actual sports industry. So I really started to take the things that I was learning in class and applying it, and people started to notice. And the other thing that I did when I got into the Miami Marlins is I knew that I was just an intern, but I was going to make myself known. That would be my
Yeah.
second point is make yourself known. So I was never fearful of introducing myself to whoever it was. I was in a situation where after my first month or two, and I already had the summer of them kind of knowing who I was and whatnot. They had a lot of trust in me to do certain things in
Mhm.
through the foundation, whether it be planning and leading events, or whether it be communicating with outside programs and things like that. I remember this one event that we did. It was a food garden that we created at Lone Depot Park, and at the unveiling of this event, we had the top executives of the organization coming to for the news outlets and everything else like that. And I remember seeing 3 or 4 of them and sparking conversations with each and every one of them. And I remember to this day one of them, Andre Luck, who is in the sales and service side of the Miami Marlins. He's someone who I still talk to today and seek advice to, and that's someone that I built that connection off that one conversation in that one event. So making yourself seen and making yourself heard, and then using that afterwards. That would be my third point is being confident in yourself. Is focusing on now that I have that connection, or now that that person knows who I am, don't be fearful to knock on their door and ask
Mhm.
them for here's where I'm at with this. How do you feel about this, or can you tell me a little bit more about your career path and things like that. People in sports industry, they remember those things, and
Yeah.
they really appreciate those things as well. So I would say I found myself in maybe like 10 or 15 offices in the first 6 months of my internship, just knocking on doors and asking people how they got to where they were.
Yeah.
And I ended up finding people who gave me career advice, and people who gave me life advice, and then that turns into the confidence that you need to really make it to the next level, and put yourself in an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, I think putting, as you just touched on, I think putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations is obviously uncomfortable, but that's how you get the most out of the situation. You might be nervous, like, oh, that person's an executive, like they're scary, they're not going to talk to me, but we're all humans. So you go up, you talk to them, you just have a conversation, and I can guarantee it's a lot easier than you think it was, like in your head. Like in your head, it's like, no, they're going to tell me to go away, and they're going to like, yeah, yada yada yada. But really, as you're saying, and as you've done. You just go up, start conversation, and that's kind of how you build your network and you continue to grow. So
Yeah, and
that's huge.
that's not to say that there won't be some interactions that are going to be a little hardball.
Of course, yeah,
There's going to be those people in an organization that are high up there that you're not going to always get the same receptive response.
yeah,
It's about you accepting that and realizing the situation, trying to figure out a way around it, or just learning from that interaction and applying it to your next interaction at that point. And you have millions of those in your conversations with people throughout the the organization, and it's really just about learning from those interactions, learning about the individual that you're interacting with, and then kind of applying that for the future.
Right. And as you mentioned, they're kind of going into the future. And so you with you went to the Miami program, then you were with the Marlins, and then as you were kind of getting close to the graduation point, entering the real world, as I say, is what did that look like? Were you applying for jobs? Were you still doing your network? Kind of how'd that process go?
So I was pretty nervous actually. I'm not gonna lie.
Mhm.
Like as I was approaching graduation, because when you go to a school, every school almost is expensive. Like there's no
Yeah.
way you're spending money. So like the stress of I just paid for this degree. How am I gonna flip it and turn it into what I want to turn it into?
Yep.
That's gonna come regardless of your situation. Whether you're in a beautiful situation, a tough situation, you're still gonna think, I need to make sure that I got my ROI on this piece of paper.
Yep.
So I was definitely a little nervous about it, but I also knew that I worked really, really hard in my internship to make a name for myself with the Marlins. And that was my plan. I was definitely looking to continue to work in the foundation.
Mhm.
There was a couple opportunities for me that I was engaging with towards the end of my time there. And what ended up happening was the University of Miami puts on a conference every year, it's the sports industry conference.
Yep.
And what they do in this conference is they have panels, and each panel they talk about a specific topic in the sports industry. And John Jay, who's a
Mhm.
former baseball player, and he works and he's now coaching with the Miami Marlins. He was one of the panelists for the former athletes panel at this conference, and this was last year, 2022, about a month before graduation. So I was obviously working with my professors and talking to them a little bit about what my plans were, and
Mhm.
everyone said, "Hey, get to this conference and make something happen." And everyone hears that, and you don't really, as I'm 20, I was 23 at the time, I'm 24 now. I didn't know what that meant really.
Yeah.
They just make something happen and go to this conference. It's going to be valuable for you. As far as I was concerned, every conference I've ever went to when I was 18, 19, 20, I just sat there and listened to people talk. Like I really,
Yep.
like that, it was there, but there needed to be a different focus. And I think
Mhm.
that my time in the program really showed me how important that different type of focus needed to be. Because when that event got there, oh, I made it my mission. I actually missed opening day for the Miami Marlins because I was still working my internship, and I had to choose between opening day or this
Yeah.
conference, and that was big because people say opening day, in your first opening day in particular, if you work in the MLB, that's a big day. So
Oh yeah.
it was one of those, what do I do? What do I do? But I said, okay, I'm going to go to this conference and I'm going to make the most of it.
Mhm.
So at every panel, I was writing down the information that was being said, and I picked out one individual from each panel that I was going to go up to after their panel and kind of just talk to them about what I wrote down, what I'm doing, and see if there's a path there for maybe further communication. So I did that with about 5 different panelists. And the one that I felt the best about was John Jay, for
Mhm.
sure, because when he got up in his panel, he was talking about nonprofit work. I was already
Mhm.
working with the Miami Marlins at that space. He had just retired from the MLB, like maybe a few months before that. So it was really like, and then we just hit it off. We had a really, really good conversation. And then I invited him to a golf event from the Miami Marlins, which was maybe a month after that. And then after that, we continued to speak, and he ended up offering me a job to be the director of his organization, maybe a month or two after that. And that is one of those situations where when I talk to people in sport, like I know for a fact that John asked about me in the Miami Marlins organization. I
Oh.
know for a fact that my reputation within the university impacted
Mhm.
John's taking me on. But really, what happened in there was I put myself in a situation where I wanted to meet someone and I
Yep.
wanted to see where it went. And I put myself, like we talked about just now, in an uncomfortable situation,
Mhm.
walking up to people who don't really know me. And I just wrote down a whole bunch of stuff about them, and I'm using it to kind of phrase these sentences and make this conversation work. And it was great. And actually, to be honest with you, I still talk to two of the other individuals that I connected with on that conference for a variety of different reasons, whether,
Oh
like I
yeah.
said, it's career advice or life advice or whatever the case may be. So I would say that like that experience of now I've been working for John for about 8 months now.
Mhm.
Um, that it came because I chased it and I wanted it, and that's what I want most people who are watching this today to understand is a lot of the time you need to make it happen, and
Yep.
making it happen, it seems, especially for us the younger crowd, it seems like, what does that even really mean? But what it
Mhm.
means is being uncomfortable and putting yourself in a situation where who knows what might come from this, but do it anyways. Let's figure it out and then see what happens.
No, yeah, and that's a great story, and especially for the listeners to hear kind of at the time when you're about to graduate, you're nervous, you're kind of like, what do I do next? That's a perfect sentiment there of how, to make it happen and get after it. And maybe you can touch on this, but I'm curious. So when you were kind of thinking about future jobs, did you ever picture yourself as being a director of a foundation? Or I mean, was that something you saw in the future?
So interestingly enough, no, I never thought that I would be in this space and doing
Mhm.
this. However, I've been working in nonprofit for a little while now. I actually was in a fraternity in my undergrad that I was the philanthropy chairman my first year. I was the vice president my second year, and I was the president my last year. And I
Okay.
with a heavy focus on philanthropy events and things like that
Mhm.
throughout my 3 years in my fraternity. So interestingly enough, like even though I had that background, it never said, hey, maybe sports and foundation. Even when I was working with the Marlins in the foundation, I was like, this is really for me right now an introduction to sports as I worked with so many other departments and I saw so many other different things. So at the end of my internship, it wasn't even like I was still thinking about, even at that point, I wasn't thinking, oh, nonprofit is the way to go.
Right.
It was a situation where I have a passion for giving back to people. I have a passion for communicating with people. I have a passion for helping individuals get to where they want to go, and that's something that has been with me forever. And I think that when I started to learn that there's an avenue here where you don't necessarily have to work for a team and do a specific thing. You don't necessarily have to work for a college and do a specific thing. There's ways that you can be in the sports world and kind of do it on your terms. And
Mhm.
it's a difficult situation to find, and I feel very, very lucky and blessed to be able to find myself in that situation so early on in my career. But with that being said, that's really what you're chasing. Is you're chasing the flexibility to work in sports the way that you want, or if you are an individual who wants to work for a team in that way, you still need to go in there with the idea that I need to make every connection that I need to make. So, and you need to be ready and flexible to kind of go and move however you need to do it, and you do that by making those connections.
Yeah. No, and I think that's, as I was kind of learning more about, your kind of your role in your career, and I just thought it was so fascinating that being a director of a foundation, like as I said, kind of in the beginning, it never really occurred to me that that was, like kind of like a position, or that was like things that kind of people did. So, kind of, what does your day to day, I guess, look like just for the viewers? How do you like prepare for the week? Can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I think that like the thing that I enjoy the most about my position is it's me and John. Like
Hmm.
that's the organization at this moment in time. We have other individuals who continue to help us on on a variety of different projects, and we partner with programs and other organizations to help carry out different activities and programs for students
Right.
and youth development assets. But for the most part, the back end stuff, the accounting, the event planning, the fundraising, that really does all fall on my shoulders.
Hmm.
And I work with John to kind of make sure his vision is the vision that we're kind of putting out there. But what I learned, the first thing I learned was running a foundation, or honestly, running a business or doing anything on your own is tough. It's
Yeah.
really, really. I came from a situation where I was working with an entire team with the Miami Marlins Foundation, a big supporting cast, with a manager who was right with me, and she is fantastic. Shout out to Angela Smith from the Miami Marlins.
Shout out.
She was great, great, great at helping me kind of grow and learn as who I was as a professional.
Mhm.
And then I had, some of my best friends were on that team. My best friends right now are on that team right now. So I learned so much from them, and we had such a good relationship. To go from that team to then, working on your own, even though it's the same space of, foundation, it
Yeah.
was tough, and I had
Different.
to learn a lot. I had to research a lot. I had to read a lot of articles to make sure that I was doing everything right. There's a lot of red tape that needs to, be covered and made sure that you do things right, because, you have tax status situations and you have this, that, and the third, and you have to make sure your bank account is lined up perfectly. It's a lot. So the point is, I think that what I learned my day to day is make sure that you're ready to take on whatever comes in the day. So
Mhm.
what I do to kind of prepare for the week is I take a look at my weekly schedule, see what meetings I have, and then I try to kind of maneuver myself around those meetings. So if I know I have a meeting at 12 or a meeting at 1, I'm prepping those first 2, 3
Yep.
hours or whatever the case may be. And then after that, I'm working on whatever that meeting was about, so that I can keep that in the same kind of flow of work and things like that. And then at the end of that kind of situation, if I have another meeting or another call or another situation, then I'll kind of shift gears and focus on whatever other project that I have going on. But the thing that I also really enjoy about my position is it's not your typical 9 to 5. I
Yeah.
don't go into an office 9 to 5. Sometimes I'm working at the office that we do have. Sometimes I'm at John's house working with him directly. Sometimes I'm working straight from home. Sometimes I'm at the ballpark working. It really does vary on where I'm at and what I'm doing. And I think that I really enjoy that because that was one of the things I didn't like about working at a team is not only was it 9 to 5, it's 9 to 5, and then whenever else
Plus,
they
yeah.
need whenever else they need you to come in, especially with baseball when you got 81 home games.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was definitely a change of pace. There was pros and cons in both ways. But the thing that I enjoy about my day to day is I get to plan it, but at the same time, that means that everything that happens in the foundation, if I don't put it into my calendar, it's
Mhm.
not going to happen. So
Right.
I would say that it's really my day to day is really focused on my own planning and double checking and triple checking that my
Yeah.
week is has everything that it needs to have for us to go forward.
Yeah, no, and I want to touch on one thing you said. So you wearing, sounds like you're wearing multiple hats over there with the foundation. What's kind of one hat, so to speak, that you weren't expecting that you'd be wearing that you're now kind of like currently wearing, if you follow me?
I would say the finances.
Uh-huh.
That is, I think, the hardest part of a foundation in general, because at that point you're worried about percentages of how much is being donated and what programs are getting what and things like that. And I think it's really important for an organization to have someone who's focused on that.
Mhm.
And me having to learn that as much as I, was involved in things with the Miami Marlins Foundation, that was not an aspect that I really got to dive into during my internship. So that was
Yeah.
something that I had to learn on the fly, how to create the budget, how to make sure the budget stays on tune
Yeah.
and things like that. That's something I had to learn on the fly. And there's a lot of situations like that. That's just one that I pulled out of a hat. But there's a lot of situations where I need to. John will be like, "Hey, this is what's going on," and okay, either I know it. If I do, great, I'm on it. If I don't, I need to research and figure it out, and then
Yep.
work from there.
And what are some kind of the, I guess, the research tools you use beside, are you like in the sports business journal? So you got, with this foundation, it sounds like you have to be in the sports industry, right? You got to kind of know what's going on there, but you also have to know kind of events and also some of the financial stuff. So do you separate it or you just kind of take in information as it comes?
Yeah, so front office sports and sports business journal are huge. Just as I wouldn't say that I dive into those and read articles daily or something like
Mhm.
that, but I would definitely skim those to see if I see a headline that's foundation related or
Right.
even athletes related in Miami, something that's big
Mhm.
that I can maybe connect to my organization. But I would say that the way that I really keep up to date and things like that is LinkedIn, man. LinkedIn
Yeah.
is huge for individuals in my space who are looking for events and looking for things that are going on. I
Mhm.
mean, there's certain situations where I'll just go on LinkedIn and I'll see an event and I'll be like, oh, okay, they did this. Okay, how can we can maneuver to do a similar type of fundraising event and things like that. So I think that's a really really good tool. And I also think that keeping up with your own network is a good tool to
Mhm.
keep up and keep like make sure you know what's going on. So I'm always engaging with the people that I used to work with at the Marlins, and I'm always engaging with other individuals that I went to school with up in Jersey and when I went to school up down here in Miami, engaging with my network so I could just continue to stay up to date with what's going on around me, what's going on with other businesses around me, and things like that.
Awesome. And I kind of want to touch on the events in a whole, and I know this might be a long answer, but so what kind of goes into an event? How long is it? Is it like, it takes a year to kind of plan for it? What kind of goes into the marketing? Can you give us a look into that?
Yeah, so I think it definitely varies on the type of event that you're trying to have.
Mhm.
If your goal is to raise most amount of money that you're trying to raise, that's all you want to do. You need to start to plan that event very, very early. Like
Yeah.
I would say almost like 8 to 12 months early.
Yeah.
If your goal is to, have an event where you're raising money, but people are having a good time, I
Mhm.
say 6 months plus needs to be, where you're at in terms of your planning. And that's not to say that if, you want to throw an event in 3 months or
Of
4 months that
course.
you can't do
Yeah.
it. It's just like if you have a clean slate and you're ready to start from scratch, you want to take this is the time. These are about the time periods that you kind of want to look for an event. I'll give you an example. We are putting together a bowling event in Miami at the end of June, and
Mhm.
we started the process of this. I would say early January, late January, in that range.
Mhm.
And we completed a lot of our marketing assets and things like that towards the end of February and the beginning of March in that sense. And we started to reach out to sponsors in April. So that was a little bit of a late kind of push out. And, we kind of recognize that as an organization, but then, we have to also kind of think back. I mean, I started 8 months ago. So, like it was a situation where, we put it together with what we could. And I
Right.
think that's why I wanted to mention right away is even if you have to do an event that's in 3 months or that's the date that you're kind of looking for or 4 months,
Mhm.
whatever the case may be, you can make those things work. But I would say the number one thing you need to do is rely on individuals who have the experience
Yeah.
and know what they're doing. Because, like I said, I'm 24. I ran events for the Marlins, but like I always had a team, and I always had a piece of paper that, like, that I could kind of relay or use to kind of work off of. And when I started to plan these events, I didn't have those things, so it was definitely very worrisome for me at that point.
Yeah.
And then that's when I started to work with John, and he would connect me with people in his network that have done this before. I ended up connecting with someone who planned Mookie Betts's bowling event, and I worked with them to help me create the sponsorship deck. I'm
Nice.
working with individuals who can help me create, marketing assets and other things like that because of John's network. And I
Mhm.
think that using people who can help you and using people who have experience, that's key. I always had situations in my life where I was stepping into roles that I might not have had the experience to kind of, do. And I've always attacked it the same way. Find someone who has done it before, find
Yeah.
someone who knows what they're doing, and just ask them as many questions as you can. And still, even with that method, things might fall through the cracks. But guess what? Next time you learned. You
Yeah.
learned that not only did you learn everything you learned from that individual, but everything that you missed, you're not going to miss it again.
Yeah.
So I think that that's one of those things that I would say is big for just planning an event is getting experienced people to kind of give you their ear, and if you have a team, relying on that team to continue to help you in that space.
Yeah, no, and kind of one of the first points you made there is going to experience people, especially in the sports industry. You can tell me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like for the most part, the jobs that people have, there's not very many more new jobs, right? There's like GMs, you got agents, you got marketers. Like there's not going to be, this new wave of like, oh, no one's ever had this job before. So for the most part, the jobs are there. The people are already there. You can go on LinkedIn and see their past history, see what they've done. I think that's huge. Where like, oh, okay, Gabe does this event. I'm gonna go talk to Gabe. He's done it before. This is how it gets done. This is what you need to do. And I think that's just a great way to learn in general. Like if someone wants to know how to do events, they get a hold of Gabe. If someone wants to know how to do something, they got to go get him over here. And Tim's got a 20-year career of how to do it. And I think that's
Yeah.
one thing I love about the sports industry is as you were saying, it's just awesome.
Yeah, and then to even piggyback off that, we talked about how important and good LinkedIn can be, and
Right.
using it as a resource, as you just mentioned, finding individuals and looking at their history to see if they could really be an asset to you, or if you could, use, hey, your time here, how did that work, and
Mhm.
especially with even people that you are close with, you could,
Yeah.
I have great friends. One of my good friends from the Marlins, Bert Miranda, like he is in sponsorships over there, and if I look through his career, he's been in a bunch of different places and
Mhm.
has a bunch of different perspectives on sports. So when I was working on my sponsorship stuff, I went to him immediately to kind of pick
Oh
his
yeah.
brain and see, hey, what do you think about this deck, and what do you think about this approach? Do you think that we should change it in any way, and things like that? And that's someone that I've met at the Marlins, and I found out through outside research that, hey, he's a dog. I need to go talk to him a little bit more, and that's one of my great friends now. So I think it comes down to finding an individual who you feel like that can help you and help you learn things that you need to learn to execute, and then befriending that person so that you could help them and they can help you.
Definitely. And I wanted to, without giving any trade secrets and whatnot, but a lot of the viewers are kind of in the sponsorship, marketing kind of deliverables area. So as on your kind of in your world, I kind of what goes into the sponsorship side and deliverables as far as the assets and things like that. What kind of things are you pitching and promoting?
Yeah, so the first thing you're going to probably do is create your deck and figure
Mhm.
out what you have to kind of offer. And then from there, you kind of just start to diversify based on the people that you're communicating with. I think for our event in the summer, I think that we generally focused it through the deck. But
Mhm.
I think that a better approach and an approach that we're definitely going to use in the future is to find those partners and make specific sponsorship aspects or sponsorship opportunities for them. I
Mhm.
think sports teams do this very, very, very well.
Yeah.
Especially the Miami Marlins, from my experience, I think that, they find a lot of partners who want community efforts,
Mhm.
want to engage in the community, and Miami
Yep.
Marlins Foundation is huge on that. So they made those connections through sponsorship right there. That's a great example of, leveraging what your company has for what the other sponsor or the company that's helping you out supporting what they need. So essentially figuring out your understanding and figuring out who you're working with is going to be the best way for you to understand what you have to kind of give to them. It'll be best and most valuable to them.
Right. Yeah. And I think, especially for the companies, as you just touched on, what's going to be most valuable for them. And obviously, it's going to need to be a win-win at some point, right? And I think aligning that, especially with the local community, I think is massive, as you're saying,
Yeah, and
especially.
I know that when Derek Jeter came back
Mhm.
to the Marlins as the co-owner, it was one of those things that he focused on heavily was the Miami Marlins Foundation and in entrenching that organization back into the community after what had
Mhm.
happened over the past years with the past ownership. And I think that stuck,
Yeah.
for sure, even after Derek, left. And I think that the community recognizes the foundation as an organization, the Marlins Foundation, as an organization that helps and
Mhm.
does impactful programming. So I think other organizations outside of maybe the main sponsors for the Miami Marlins saw that and like, hey, this is a way that we can
Yep.
engage this community. So as the Marlins sponsorship team kind of understood is, hey, we have a very powerful community department.
Mhm.
Let's start to find our partners who are willing to put down extra money to be involved in those programs. And I think that
Right.
they did a great job doing that. And I witnessed it firsthand. Majority of our programs, I would actually, not all of our programs were attached to a sponsor. So like,
Uh-huh.
and those sponsors would come out, they would engage with us, they would do the events with us sometimes. And I think that, understanding what you have to offer and then understanding what those people are looking for that's everything.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's everything you need. And as you've been in this role now for a few months, and is there a class or maybe a specific project that you did in your graduate program that you've used, I guess, now in your current position?
So yes and no. I'll give you a light example. There was a project in my event management class where we
Mhm.
had to literally just create an event. So we had to literally she gave us like an outline. This
Right.
is your parameters, and you have to create event pitch, and then pitch it to. We actually got the opportunity to pitch it to the Miami Dolphins Hard Rock Stadium.
Oh, nice, nice.
I think it was the assistant director.
Uh-huh.
So it was an event at Hard Rock Stadium. There was a couple different parameters around the event and things like that. So I think that was a good way for me to kind of get an understanding of like what it took to do an event.
Yeah.
But generally, I will say the thing that was most valuable from my time there was just the approach. I think that
Yeah.
the school really instills in you. Like Dr. D's from the beginning would like. I remember the first class. He was like, "You're not going to be here for that long. You need
Yeah.
to make sure you make the most of every opportunity in every situation." And I think that is something that carried over to my time in the professional field and my time now in this role now is I even you don't know what opportunity what can come from an opportunity, so make the most out of everything that you do.
Yep.
And you don't know how long you're going to have an opportunity, you don't know how long you're going to be in a specific place. Make the most out of everything and see what you can do.
Mhm.
And that's really what I did with the Marlins, and that's really what I'm going to continue to do here with John Jay and the foundation.
Yeah, that's just great. Great life advice there is just whether you're in any industry, right? Whether it's, you make flowers or you work in sports or you do whatever. And speaking kind of in the sports industry, you touched about, the beginning, kind of your time at the New York Marathon, then you're with the Marlins, now you're with the foundation. Is there kind of a certain sector or business industry with inside sports that you're like, oh, that'd be kind of cool to work, in that type of position or that type of role in the future?
For sure, 100%. Youth sports.
Yep.
Youth sports is where I want to be.
Mhm.
I actually have an organization up in Jersey where I was born. I was born in New York and raised in New Jersey. I have an organization up there called AP Athletics. Our focus is actually right now we're reviving baseball in our hometown. We're coaching about 6 teams, and on top of that, we are focusing on potentially bringing a facility to that location in the next 3 to
Oh,
5
nice.
years. like a performance facility. So, that's really the space that, I want to be in. And then once we have a facility, I want to help my own foundation down here, the John Jay Foundation. And then,
Mhm.
I want to start a foundation up there that helps individuals who may not be able to afford, the facility. I want everyone to have access to it. So it's not just something that I want to build and then make a bunch of money. I want to
Right.
build this facility so that I can truly impact the people that that used to live in the area that I grew up in, and I think that is something that is really important to me. And everything that I'm doing down here, every connection that I make, every person that I'm like, everything that I learn
Mhm.
doesn't matter is going into an effort to continue to build other avenues to help other youth sports and youth individuals in general, youth development.
Yeah, and just to touch on that a little bit, but is that organization that you said it's in New Jersey?
Yeah, so we actually operate in New Jersey. We're coaching right now. We're coaching two little league teams and two travel baseball teams,
Oh,
and then
nice.
we're helping with two other teams as well. So we have a process right now where we have about like 4 or 5 coaches,
Mhm.
and right now we're just at this point we're just getting our name out there. Because we have like the overall plans of having a performance facility. We didn't
Mhm.
want to just build a facility and then try to get
Have
people. We
nobody.
want people
Yeah.
to, yeah, we want people to know who we are as AP Athletics and figure that out. And then over the next year or two, we're going to start to progress more towards finding investments to build a large scale performance facility for the youth down up there.
Oh, awesome. And then I guess for AP Athletics, what's kind of, I mean, this is a whole new business, sector
Yeah,
here and thing,
yeah.
but
I know that this is probably something we could have dove into in the podcast, but you know what? For this is the thing about it is it's something that has really just started,
mhm,
and I know that it's going to change a million times along the way.
of course.
So I have a couple concerns about just vocalizing exactly where we're at and where we're
Yeah, yeah,
doing
yeah.
and what we're going because I know that it's going to be a very fluid situation, especially
Mhm.
with me being down here, flying back up and forth, kind of working on it in that way. I know things are going to continue to change, but I know that our overall mission of we want to help kids in not just baseball but in sports up there in
Right.
Jersey. That's the overall mission, and then we want to build a facility to kind of enlarge and elevate that.
Enhance that. Awesome. Yeah, no, I love it. And a lot of it, we can kind of follow it. I guess it'd be fun to follow it from kind of the inception here as you guys have been working on it, doing it, and then kind of
Hey,
circle
maybe I
back.
hop on to season 4 or 5 and we
Yeah, there
talk
you go.
the AP
Yeah,
conversation
we see
instead.
where AP is at and see the growth it's had, and yeah, that'd be awesome. And that's one of the things I love about sports is to see everyone's journeys as we're all kind of starting out, and then as we progress, 5, 10, 15 years to see, where everyone's at, and yeah, that'd be sweet. So we can circle back then, and just kind of
Yeah, for
just
sure, for sure.
just kind of the close. I guess I want to give you the floor. The floor is yours. You can talk to the viewers, let them know what's coming up, different events, or how to find you on the socials, or kind of really whatever. So yeah, the floor is yours, Gabe.
Yeah, for sure. If anyone's interested in following the J Family Foundation and all the things that we have going on, you can follow us at J Family Foundation on Instagram. Our website is www.jfamilyfoundation.com, so you can go check us out there as well. Like I said, if anyone's in Miami interested in coming to our event in June, you can go to either of those things. That we have an info sheet that you can ask about on our website, and you could also just DM us on Instagram. We'll be able to kind of provide more information on that. And honestly, the one thing I do want to say to viewers, if you're here watching, keep watching, man, because
Yeah.
what it seems like from this conversation and what I've seen so far from your guys' work is you guys get information out there that isn't typically always going to be out there. So if people take the time and watch, what you guys are giving to them, it could really potentially give them an insight or a perspective that can genuinely help their career. And it's going to be in those individuals that want that help,
Mhm.
that are going to be able to really benefit from this situation. But people watching, keep watching, keep watching. Seriously, this is a good situation, and you're going to keep learning, and that's the key to sports industry.
Yeah, appreciate that, and meeting like-minded individuals as yourself. I think that's the way we're all going to be able to grow, especially with this podcast. We can all kind of grow together, and I think that's what would be impactful as we go on with our careers. So thanks for joining us today, Gabe. We appreciate your time. I know you got a busy schedule down there in Miami with this event coming up, so we'll make sure to send that out to the viewers and kind of get that online and kind of do our part there. And we're just kind of close here, and we appreciate it. Like I said, you jumping on today. So thanks everyone for watching and listening to another episode of the Constant Sports Podcast. And we'll be dropping this on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. And we're looking forward to watch Gabe as he goes in his career, and also maybe circle back here in a few seasons with AP Athletics up there in Jersey. So thanks again, Gabe.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I appreciate it. We'll talk to you later.